Good evening, ma'am. Do you know why I pulled you over?
Good evening, officer. No, I don't believe I
License
do.
and registration, please.
Certainly. One moment. Is there a specific infraction, officer? I was driving the speed limit.
Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down. I'm just doing my job.
Officer, this is entirely unnecessary. I am a
Are you
sitting
refusing to
judge.
comply with my lawful order?
On a rain-slicked highway, under the indifferent glow of streetlights, a routine traffic stop became a crucible, forging a legacy of injustice and a testament to the enduring power of systemic bias. It began, as so many stories of institutional failure do, with a flash of blue and red in the rearview mirror, a mundane Tuesday evening transformed into a battleground for dignity, for recognition, for the very right to exist without unwarranted suspicion. This is the story of Trooper Marcus Thorne, an officer whose record was already a tapestry woven with 11 formal complaints spanning his relatively short career. Each complaint, meticulously documented in internal affairs files, served as a stark, unheeded warning about a pattern of conduct that should have been addressed but wasn't. 11 complaints. Each one a whisper, then a shout about an escalating disregard for protocol, for professional courtesy, and for the fundamental rights of the citizens he swore to protect. His history was not just a series of isolated incidents. It was a prelude, a harbinger of the confrontation that would ultimately define his career and expose the cracks in the system that allowed him to continue. And in that dark sedan, pulled over on the shoulder of Interstate 79, just outside Fairhaven, sat Judge Eleanor Vance, a woman whose life had been a relentless ascent through the echelons of justice, a respected jurist on the Commonwealth Court, a distinguished legal scholar, a beacon of integrity in her community. Her career was marked by tireless dedication, by a profound commitment of fairness, and by the sheer intellectual rigor required to navigate the complexities of the law. Yet, on that night, none of her accomplishments, none of her impeccable credentials, none of her decades of dedicated public service seemed to matter. To Trooper Thorne, she was just another driver, another statistic, another target. Her professional standing, her very identity, her hard-won authority, was stripped away in a harsh, unforgiving glare of a police spotlight, replaced by suspicion and an unyielding presumption of guilt. This wasn't just a traffic stop. It was an erasure. It was a stark, brutal reminder that even at the highest levels of professional achievement, the color of one's skin can still dictate the terms of engagement with authority, turning a simple drive home into an ordeal of profound dehumanization. Before we continue unraveling this profound and deeply unsettling narrative, exposing the mechanisms that allowed such injustice to unfold, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know. Your engagement fuels our mission to expose these truths and demand accountability. The incident unfolded on a Tuesday evening, November 14th, at approximately 9:47 p.m. on a desolate stretch of Interstate 79, just south of the Fairhaven city limits. Fairhaven, a sprawling industrial city nestled in the heart of Pennsylvania, was experiencing one of its characteristic late autumn downpours. The rain was relentless, a thick sheet of water blurring the neon glow of distant gas stations and the stoic, gray concrete of the highway overpasses. The air hung heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and dying leaves, a chill that seeped into the bones. Traffic was sparse, the few cars on the road kicking up plumes of spray, their headlights carving fleeting paths through the gloom. It was a kind of night where most people yearn for the warmth and safety of home, a night that felt isolated and foreboding, a perfect canvas for encounter to slip unnoticed into the annals of bureaucratic indifference. Judge Eleanor Vance was doing precisely that, heading home. Her journey was a familiar one, a nightly commute from the Commonwealth Court chambers in the state capitol back to her quiet suburban residence in Fairhaven. But Judge Vance was no ordinary commuter. Her life had been a testament to resilience, intellect, and unwavering dedication. Born in the city's historically Black Hill district, Eleanor Vance had navigated a path few before her had dared to tread. She was a first-generation college graduate, earning her undergraduate degree summa cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania, followed by a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School. Her academic achievements were not just personal triumphs. They were signals of a formidable mind destined for impact, for reshaping the very landscape of justice. Upon graduating, she eschewed the lucrative world of corporate law, choosing instead to dedicate her formidable talents to public service. She began her career as a public defender, fiercely advocating for the indigent and marginalized, spending nearly a decade fighting for those caught in the unforgiving machinery of the justice system. Her reputation for meticulous preparation, sharp legal analysis, and an unshakable commitment to justice quickly grew. She then transitioned to the district attorney's office, where she rose through the ranks, becoming the first black woman to serve as deputy district attorney for Fairhaven County. In this role, she championed reforms for juvenile justice and established innovative community outreach programs, earning accolades from across the political spectrum and demonstrating her capacity for both prosecution and compassionate reform. In 2010, at the age of 45, Eleanor Vance was appointed to the Court of Common Pleas, and just 5 years later, she made history again, becoming the first black woman elevated to Commonwealth Court, a position she held with distinction. She was known for her incisive opinions, her commitment to the rule of law, and her compassionate yet firm judicial temperament. She had published numerous articles in prestigious legal journals, lectured at universities nationwide, and served on several state commissions dedicated to judicial ethics and legal reform, always striving to improve the system from within. Judge Vance had not merely achieved her position. She had meticulously, painstakingly, and brilliantly earned it, building a career founded on merit, integrity, and an unyielding pursuit of justice. Her presence on the bench was a symbol of progress, a testament to the idea that the system, however flawed, could still elevate those most deserving, those who embodied the very ideals of justice. Meanwhile, the officer who initiated this fateful stop, Trooper Marcus Thorne, had a professional record that presented a stark contrast. Internal affairs records, later unsealed during the civil litigation, revealed a deeply troubling pattern of conduct. In his 7 years with the state police, Thorne had accumulated 11 formal complaints, a number significantly higher than the departmental average, signaling a consistent deviation from expected professional standards. His first documented incident occurred just 18 months into his tenure. In April 2017, Thorne was cited for excessive force during a traffic stop involving a 22-year-old college student, Mr. David Chun, who was pulled over for a broken taillight, according to Chen's sworn affidavit. Thorne immediately escalated the encounter, shouting commands, yanking Chun from his vehicle, and slamming him against the hood, resulting in minor abrasions and a formal complaint. The incident was dismissed internally with a verbal warning for Thorne, a disciplinary action that many later argued was woefully inadequate for the severity of the alleged force. Less than a year later, in January 2018, Thorne was the subject of another complaint for racial profiling. He stopped a prominent local physician, Dr. Samuel Green, a black man, for allegedly swerving erratically on a residential street. Dashcam footage, however, showed Dr. Green driving perfectly within his lane, adhering to all traffic laws. During the stop, Thorne aggressively questioned Dr. Green's ownership of his luxury vehicle and demanded to search his trunk without probable cause, clearly implying suspicion based on race and vehicle type. Dr. Green, a seasoned professional who understood his rights, refused the search and filed a complaint alleging racial bias. Thorne was again given a written reprimand for unprofessional conduct, another slap on the wrist for behavior that suggested a deeper, unaddressed issue. The pattern was clear, if largely ignored by the very department tasked with oversight. A third incident, in July 2019, involved a contentious interaction with a family during a minor fender bender investigation. Witnesses stated Thorne was dismissive, condescending, and openly hostile toward the family, who were Hispanic. He allegedly threatened them with arrest for obstructing an investigation when they attempted to clarify details about the accident, escalating a calm situation into one of fear and intimidation. This led to a formal complaint from the family, which was ultimately categorized as unsubstantiated due to conflicting accounts, despite multiple witness statements that largely aligned against Thorne's version of events, raising questions about the thoroughness of the internal investigation. Finally, in March 2021, just 8 months before the incident with Judge Vance, Thorne received a fourth complaint for a highly aggressive interaction with a homeless man near the Fairhaven train station. Thorne was accused of using unnecessary physical force during a welfare check, resulting in the man sustaining a broken wrist. Although Thorne claimed the man resisted arrest, the man's lawyer later provided medical records proving a pre-existing medical condition that made the force particularly egregious and disproportionate. This complaint resulted in Thorne being placed on administrative leave for 3 days, but no further disciplinary action was taken, allowing him to return active duty, without any significant reevaluation of his fitness for service. These incidents, among others, painted a disturbing portrait of an officer whose approach to policing was consistently confrontational, often disproportionate, and frequently tinged with apparent bias. The Internal Affairs Department, despite holding these records, had repeatedly failed to implement any substantive interventions, any meaningful retraining, or any serious disciplinary measures. The system, it seemed, was designed to protect its own, allowing a troubling pattern to fester, ultimately setting the stage for the catastrophic encounter with Judge Vance, an encounter that would finally tear open the veil of institutional complacency. The catalyst for that Tuesday night's confrontation was, according to dispatch records, an anonymous tip received at 9:35 p.m. The call, later scrutinized in court and revealed to be from an unregistered burner phone, described a dark-colored sedan, possibly a late-model Mercedes or BMW, driving suspiciously slow and weaving slightly on Interstate 79 northbound, just north of exit 75. The anonymous caller further added, with an almost imperceptible pause that spoke volumes, that the driver appeared to be black. This detail, seemingly innocuous to some, was explicitly noted by the dispatcher and relayed to Trooper Thorne, who was patrolling a few miles south. It was a detail that, in the context of Thorne's history, would prove profoundly significant. A vague, unverified report amplified by a racial description, setting in motion a chain of events that would unravel careers, expose deep-seated prejudices, and cost taxpayers millions. Judge Vance, meanwhile, was engaged in the most mundane and legitimate activities, driving home from a late evening judicial conference. She had spent the last 3 hours immersed in robust discussions on sentencing guidelines and judicial ethics, a routine but intellectually demanding part of her demanding role. Her sedan, a meticulously maintained black BMW 7 Series, was indeed traveling at a speed slightly below the posted limit, a habit she adopted in adverse weather conditions, especially on rainy nights, prioritizing safety over haste. The weaving slightly described by the anonymous caller was, as later evidenced by crystal-clear dashcam footage, nothing more than a minor, almost imperceptible correction for standing water on the highway, a common occurrence on I-79 during heavy rainfall. There was no erratic driving, no indication of impairment, no legitimate reason for suspicion beyond the anonymous, racially tinged tip. She was simply a conscientious driver, navigating treacherous conditions, completely unaware that she had been singled out, prejudged, and targeted by a system designed to protect, not persecute. This is a critical juncture in understanding the dynamics of policing and the thresholds for intervention. Should officers be required to independently verify the specific details of an anonymous tip, especially when those details include racial descriptors, before initiating a high-stakes traffic stop that carries such potential for civil rights violations? Or is the mere act of receiving a call, however vague or potentially biased, sufficient probable cause, regardless of profound implications for justice and public trust? Share your thoughts on this fundamental question in the comments below. Trooper Thorne Patrol Car, Unit 714, quickly caught up to Judge Vance's BMW. The dash-cam footage, which would become the cornerstone of the subsequent lawsuit, captured the entire escalating sequence with chilling clarity. At 9:47 p.m., Thorne activated his lights and siren. Judge Vance, seeing the flashing blue and red in her rearview mirror, immediately signaled and pulled over to the right shoulder, engaging her hazard lights. Her actions were textbook compliance, calm, immediate, and without hesitation, demonstrating no hint of resistance or guilt. Thorne approached the driver's side, flashlight in hand, its beam cutting through the rain and illuminating the interior of Judge Vance's car. His tone was immediately aggressive, devoid of the customary professional courtesy. "License and registration, ma'am. Do you know why I pulled you over?" His voice was loud, accusatory, and designed to intimidate. Judge Vance, lowering her window smoothly, responded calmly, "Good evening, officer. No, I don't. I believe I was driving within the speed limit, and I just left a judicial conference." Her voice was clear, composed, betraying no hint of alarm, only mild confusion and a desire for clarity. Thorne, without acknowledging her statement, leaned closer, his voice rising, imbued with a predetermined suspicion. I asked for your license and registration, and you were swerving all over the road. You seem agitated. He projected his own assumptions onto her, ignoring her calm demeanor. I am not agitated, officer. I am a judge, and I was simply stating my destination, Judge Vance said, her composure unwavering as she reached for her wallet, moving slowly and deliberately to avoid any misinterpretation of her actions. She retrieved her driver's license and her official judicial identification card, a laminated badge clearly displaying her name, title, and the prominent seal of the Commonwealth Court. She handed both to Thorne, expecting a professional acknowledgement. Thorne glanced at the driver's license, then at the judicial ID. A flicker of something, surprise, disbelief, perhaps even annoyance or resentment, crossed his face, imperceptible to the casual observer, but starkly clear on the high-definition dash cam. He held up the judicial ID with a dismissive gesture. What is this? Anyone can fake this. This means nothing. His dismissive tone was palpable, dripping with incredulity, as if the very idea of a black woman holding such a position was inherently suspect, an impossibility he refused to entertain. Officer, that is my official judicial identification. I am Judge Eleanor Vance of Commonwealth Court, she stated, her voice now carrying a firmer, more authoritative edge, though still measured and controlled. You can verify it. My name is on it, my photograph is on it, and the court seal is clearly visible. It is a legitimate document. I don't care what it says, Thorne retorted, his voice now a clear challenge, his body language becoming more aggressive. He shone his flashlight directly into her face, a tactic of intimidation. You're driving suspiciously. I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. Step out of my vehicle? Officer, on what grounds? Judge Vance asked, her brow furrowed with legitimate concern. I have provided my identification. I have committed no offense. I am not under arrest, am I? What is the basis for this command? You're obstructing an investigation, Thorne declared, stepping back and reaching for his radio, his hand hovering over his holster. And I have reason to believe you might be impaired. This was a blatant fabrication, unsupported by any observation or evidence, a desperate attempt to justify his escalating aggression. At this point, the situation began to draw attention. Another vehicle, a minivan driven by a family returning from a late dinner, slowed down significantly, its occupants clearly observing the escalating interaction with growing alarm. A truck driver, pulling over further up the road, also watched, his cab lights casting long shadows, his face a grim mask. These witnesses, later crucial to the case, silently bore witness to the unfolding drama, their presence a silent rebuke to Thorne's unchecked authority. Judge Vance, realizing the futility of reasoning with an officer seemingly determined to escalate the encounter regardless of the facts, calmly but firmly stated, Officer, I am requesting your supervisor. Immediately, I believe the stop is unlawful. Thorne ignored her, his hand now on her car door handle. Step out of the car, ma'am. Now. His voice was a demand, not a request, and his intention to physically remove her was clear. Just as Thorne moved to physically remove Judge Vance, a new set of flashing lights appeared in the distance, rapidly approaching. It was Sergeant David Ramirez, Thorne's direct supervisor, who had been monitoring the radio traffic and, according to his later testimony, had become increasingly uneasy with Thorne's tone and perceived lack of legitimate probable cause for the stop. Ramirez, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for professionalism and a commitment to de-escalation, pulled up behind Thorne's patrol car, his face grim, his posture radiating authority. He exited his vehicle quickly, his expression one of controlled urgency. He immediately approached Thorne, bypassing Judge Vance's open car door, his focus entirely on his subordinate. Trooper Thorne, what is going on here? Report. His voice was low, but firm, cutting to persistent drumming of the rain. Thorne, clearly startled by his supervisor's sudden appearance, stammered, his bravado instantly deflating. Sergeant, I have a suspicious driver. Possible impairment. She's refusing to comply with my orders, and she's flashing some fake ID claiming to be a judge. He attempted to maintain his narrative, even in the face of his superior. Sergeant Ramirez, without breaking eye contact with Thorne, reached out and took the judicial ID from Thorne's hand. He examined it for a moment, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized the official seal and the name. Then he turned to Judge Vance, still seated in her car, her face illuminated by the interior light, a silent testament to her ordeal. "Judge Vance? My apologies, ma'am. Is everything all right?" His tone was instantly deferential, respectful, a stark contrast to Thorne's aggressive posture, a belated recognition of the dignity Thorne had so carelessly disregarded. Ramirez then turned back to Thorne, his voice now a low, dangerous growl, barely audible over the rain but laden with unyielding authority. "Trooper, step away from the vehicle. Give me your badge and your weapon. Now!" The command was absolute, leaving no room for negotiation or defiance. The incident, as an active confrontation, was over, but its repercussions were only just beginning to unfold, signaling the end of one career and a new chapter in the fight for justice. The immediate resolution on that rain-swept highway was swift and decisive. Sergeant Ramirez, having relieved Trooper Thorne his badge and weapon, personally apologized to Judge Vance, his words heavy with embarrassment and genuine concern. He confirmed her identity through official channels on his patrol car's computer, a process that took mere seconds and unequivocally validated her judicial credentials, exposing the baselessness of Thorne's claims. Judge Vance, still composed but visibly shaken, accepted his apology, though the trauma of the unwarranted stop was etched on her face, a mark that would not easily fade. Ramirez then arranged for another trooper, a junior officer who had arrived as backup, to escort Judge Vance safely home, ensuring she faced no further harassment or delay. Thorne, meanwhile, was ordered into Sergeant Ramirez's patrol car and driven directly back to barracks, placed on administrative leave effective immediately, his career hanging by a thread. The silence in the aftermath of their departure was profound, broken only by the persistent drumming of the rain, a somber backdrop to the exposed injustice. The immediate crisis was averted, but the deeper wounds had been exposed, signaling a reckoning that would inevitably follow. This incident, caught on multiple cameras and witnessed by civilians, inevitably raises a critical question about accountability in law enforcement, particularly when an officer's actions demonstrate such a blatant disregard for protocol, a profound lack of judgment, and a clear potential for racial bias. When an officer's history paints a consistent picture of misconduct, should that officer face automatic termination after such a public and egregious violation? Or do disciplinary processes need to allow for rehabilitation and retraining, even in cases where public trust has been severely eroded? We invite you to share your perspective on this complex ethical dilemma in the comments below. The dash cam footage, along with supplementary cell phone videos captured by the observing motorists, leaked to local news outlets within 48 hours. What followed was an absolute social media explosion, a wildfire of outrage fueled by the undeniable visual evidence. The video of Trooper Thorne's aggressive demeanor, his dismissive, anyone can fake that comment regarding a legitimate judicial ID, and Sergeant Ramirez's swift, decisive intervention went viral at an unprecedented pace. Within 24 hours of its release, the primary dashcam video had garnered over 10 million views across various platforms, a staggering number that underscored the public's visceral reaction. News segments covering the incident dominated local and national broadcasts, dissecting every frame, every word. Hashtags like hashtag Justice for Judge Vance and hashtag Trooper Thorne trended for days, accumulating hundreds of thousands of posts, comments, and shares, each one a testament to the collective indignation. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming, fueled by the stark contrast between Judge Vance's dignified restraint and Thorne's unprovoked hostility, and by the painful familiarity of the narrative from many marginalized communities. The story was clear. A respected black judge had been racially profiled and subjected to an unlawful, humiliating stop by an officer with a documented history of misconduct, and the world was watching. The institutional responses were initially defensive, characterized by vague statements about ongoing investigations, but quickly shifted under the crushing weight of public pressure and irrefutable video evidence. Within a week, Judge Vance, through her legal counsel, announced her intention to file a civil rights lawsuit against Trooper Thorne, the Pennsylvania State Police, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, signaling that this incident would not be quietly swept under the rug. The lawsuit, filed in federal court, made several specific claims, meticulously detailing the violations and the systemic failures that enabled them. 1. Violation of Fourth Amendment rights *, alleging an unlawful stop and detention without probable cause, as the anonymous tip was insufficient and unverified. 2. Violation of 14th Amendment rights, equal protection, asserting racial discrimination and profiling as the primary motivation for the stop and Thorne's subsequent actions. 3. Assault and battery *, related to Thorne's attempt to physically remove Judge Vance from her vehicle, a use of force deemed unwarranted and illegal. 4. Intentional infliction of emotional distress *, citing the profound psychological harm, humiliation, and fear caused by the officer's aggressive and disrespectful conduct. 5. Negligent training and supervision * against the state police and the Commonwealth, arguing their egregious failure to address Thorne's documented pattern of misconduct directly led to this incident. The suit meticulously detailed Thorne's 11 prior complaints, presenting them as irrefutable evidence of a systemic failure to discipline a problematic officer, creating a dangerous environment for citizens. The evidence was overwhelming. The dash cam footage spoke for itself, a silent but powerful witness. The anonymous tip, with its racially descriptive detail, was placed under intense scrutiny, its veracity crumbling under examination. The testimony of the civilian witnesses corroborated Judge Vance's account, adding another layer of irrefutable truth. Faced with an unassailable case and mounting public pressure that threatened to drag the department through a lengthy and damaging public trial, the defendants quickly moved to settlement negotiations, recognizing the immense liability they faced. After intense negotiations, a settlement was reached just 4 months after the incident, a remarkably swift resolution indicative of the strength of Judge Vance's case. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, on behalf of the state police, agreed to pay Judge Eleanor Vance a staggering $4 million. This sum represented one of the largest settlements in the history of the Pennsylvania State Police for a single civil rights violation involving a traffic stop, a figure that underscored the severity of the injustice. The settlement was not merely a monetary figure. It was an admission of profound institutional failure, a tacit acknowledgement of the egregious violation of Judge Vance's rights and the systemic issues that allowed it to occur. It sent a clear, undeniable message about the severity of the misconduct and the prohibitive cost of unchecked power and institutional complacency. As for Trooper Marcus Thorne, his career as a state trooper ended abruptly and irrevocably. On January 28th, just over 2 months after the incident and shortly before the settlement was finalized, he received his official termination letter. The letter, later leaked to the press, stated in no uncertain terms, "Your conduct on November 14th, in direct violation of departmental policy, state law, and the constitutional rights of Judge Eleanor Vance, constitutes gross misconduct and an irreparable breach of the public trust. Your repeated failure to adhere to professional standards, as evidenced by your disciplinary record, leaves the department no recourse but to terminate your employment immediately." The letter further cited his lack of candor during the internal investigation and his failure to demonstrate appropriate respect for a judicial officer. Beyond termination, the Pennsylvania Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, POEC, moved swiftly to decertify Thorne, revoking his ability to serve as a police officer. Anywhere in the state, his badge, his weapon, and his authority were gone, stripped away as definitively as he had attempted to strip Judge Vance of her dignity, a final, public accounting for his actions. In the wake of the settlement and Thorne's termination, Judge Eleanor Vance emerged not just as a victim, but as a powerful voice for change, transforming her personal ordeal into a platform for systemic critique. In a public statement delivered from the steps of the Commonwealth Court, her words resonated with a quiet strength that belied the profound injustice she had endured, carrying the weight of experience and the conviction of principle. Her testimony was not about personal vengeance, but about universal principles of justice and equality, about the very fabric of American democracy. "If this can happen to me," she declared, her voice clear and unwavering, cutting through the silence of the assembled press, "a black woman who has dedicated her entire life to upholding the law, who sits on the very bench that administers justice, then what hope is there for the countless others who do not have my platform, my resources, or my public visibility?" What happens to the young black man pulled over on a dark street without a judicial ID, without a dashcam recording, without witnesses to his plight? What happens to the single mother rushing home from her second job, who encounters an officer determined to find fault where none exists simply because of her appearance or the car she drives? My experience, however painful and humiliating, must serve as a stark mirror reflecting the systemic biases that still plague our institutions of law enforcement. This was not merely an isolated incident of a rogue officer. This was a predictable outcome of a system that allowed a pattern of misconduct to fester unaddressed until it erupted in a public spectacle of humiliation and injustice. We must demand more than apologies and settlements. We must demand fundamental, structural change. The trust between communities and those sworn to protect them is fragile, easily shattered, and it irrevocably breaks under the weight of such encounters. It is incumbent upon all of us to rebuild it, brick by painstaking brick, with accountability, transparency, and an unwavering commitment to equal justice under the law. Her speech was a rallying cry, a powerful testament to her resolve to turn her personal ordeal into a catalyst for broader societal reflection and lasting reform. Judge Vance's powerful testimony, coupled with the magnitude of the settlement and the irrefutable evidence of Thorne's past conduct, sparked a national conversation that transcended the immediate incident. It compelled many to ask, should an incident of this nature, involving such clear evidence of racial profiling, a documented pattern of officer misconduct, and a substantial financial payout, automatically trigger a federal investigation into practices of the entire state police department? What level of systemic failure, and what pattern of civil rights violations warrants intervention from a higher, federal authority to ensure justice and prevent future abuses? Let us know your thoughts on this critical question of federal oversight in the comments below. Under intense public and political pressure, the Pennsylvania State Police, in conjunction with the governor's office, commissioned an independent review board to scrutinize the department's internal affairs processes, training protocols, and disciplinary mechanisms. The findings, released 6 months later in a comprehensive report, were damning, confirming what many had long suspected. The report, titled An Examination of Systemic Failures in Officer Accountability, outlined several critical deficiencies that contributed directly to Thorne's unchecked behavior and the incident with Judge Vance. 1. Inadequate complaint review process *. The report found that while complaints were formally documented, there was a consistent and alarming failure to aggregate and analyze data to identify problematic patterns. Thorne's 11 complaints, for example, were treated as individual, disconnected incidents rather than indicators of a larger, escalating behavioral issue that demanded immediate intervention. 2. Lack of early intervention systems *. Despite the availability of data and the existence of similar systems in other departments, the Pennsylvania State Police had no effective early warning system to flag officers with multiple complaints, use of force incidents, or citizen grievances. This systemic oversight allowed officers like Thorne to continue their problematic behavior unchecked, without any proactive measures. 3. Insufficient disciplinary action *. The review revealed a pervasive culture where minor disciplinary actions, such as verbal warnings and written reprimands, were disproportionately applied even in cases involving serious allegations, rather than pursuing more substantive retraining, counseling, suspension, or termination when warranted. This created an environment of impunity. 4. Bias in training *. The report highlighted significant deficiencies in racial sensitivity training and de-escalation techniques, suggesting that existing programs were largely perfunctory, lacked practical application, and failed to adequately prepare officers for diverse community interactions or to recognize and mitigate their own implicit biases. 5. Lack of transparency *. The internal affairs process was found to be opaque and shrouded in secrecy, with limited public access to findings and disciplinary outcomes. This lack of transparency fostered a deep-seated lack of public trust and undermined true accountability. In response to these scathing findings, the governor's office and the state police commissioner, facing an unprecedented crisis of confidence, announced a comprehensive package of reforms, promising a new era of accountability and community engagement. These included implementation of a new early intervention system *, designed to proactively flag officers exhibiting patterns of misconduct based on robust data analytics of complaints, use of force reports, vehicle pursuits, and other critical metrics, triggering mandatory reviews and interventions. Asterisk mandatory bias training and de-escalation certification asterisk. All troopers would undergo enhanced, recurring training developed in collaboration with civil rights organizations, academic experts, and community leaders, focusing on implicit bias recognition, cultural competency, and advanced de-escalation techniques. Asterisk overhaul of the Internal Affairs Division asterisk, including external oversight mechanisms, independent civilian review panels for serious complaints, and increase public transparency in disciplinary outcomes to rebuild trust. Asterisk revised use of force policies asterisk emphasizing de-escalation as the primary tactic, mandating comprehensive reporting and review for all force incidents, and clearly defining accountability for excessive force. Asterisk community advisory boards asterisk to facilitate ongoing dialogue, foster collaboration, and build trust between law enforcement and the diverse communities they serve, creating a feedback loop for continuous improvement. These reforms, while promising extensive on paper, were met with cautious optimism by civil rights advocates and community leaders. The true test, many argued, would lie not in their announcement, but in their consistent, equitable, and rigorous implementation, ensuring that the lessons learned from Judge Vance's ordeal translated into lasting, meaningful change across the entire force, rather than merely becoming another set of unfulfilled promises. The case of Judge Eleanor Vance and Trooper Marcus Thorne is more than just a cautionary tale of individual misconduct. It is a profound, unsettling indictment of a system where unchecked bias can override irrefutable evidence, where professional credentials can be dismissed with a wave of a hand, and where the dignity of a citizen can be stripped away in the blink of an eye. This incident laid bare a fundamental truth, that for some, the presumption of guilt, fueled by racial prejudice, remains a deeply ingrained default, regardless of who is behind the wheel. It exposed a systemic vulnerability where the very mechanisms designed to ensure accountability, internal affairs, disciplinary review, had become ineffective, allowing a pattern of abuse to not only persist but to escalate, culminating in a confrontation that should never have happened, a confrontation that cost millions and shattered trust. The consequences of the systemic failure were far-reaching and devastating, rippling through individual lives and institutional structures. For Judge Vance, it was a trauma of public humiliation, the profound betrayal of trust in the institution she had dedicated her life to, and the stark reminder that even her elevated status offered no immunity from racial profiling. For Trooper Thorne, it was the abrupt end of a career, a public disgrace, and the loss of his ability to ever serve in law enforcement again, a consequence directly linked to his own choices and the system that enabled them. For the Pennsylvania State Police, it was a multi-million-dollar settlement that drained taxpayer funds, a severe blow to public confidence and morale, and a forced reckoning with long-ignored internal flaws. And for the community, it was a renewed sense of urgency, a demand for genuine reform, and a painful reaffirmation of how far we still have to go to achieve true equal justice, to ensure that the color of one's skin is never a pretext for suspicion or abuse. So what changes now? Do these high-profile cases, these massive settlements, these public apologies and announced reforms truly shift the paradigm? Or do they merely act as temporary salves, patching over deeper, more insidious wounds that continue to bleed beneath the surface, waiting for the next catalyst? The challenge before us is immense. To ensure that the systemic failures exposed by Judge Vance's ordeal are not merely acknowledged, but fundamentally dismantled. It demands a relentless pursuit of transparency, an unwavering commitment to true accountability, and a profound shift in the culture of policing, a shift that prioritizes de-escalation over confrontation, respect over suspicion, and community trust over institutional self-preservation, a shift that recognizes the inherent dignity of every individual. One policy proposal that has gained significant traction in the wake of such incidents is the creation of independent civilian review boards with subpoena power, the authority to conduct their own investigations, and the power to recommend disciplinary action, including termination, directly to the relevant authorities. Do you believe such a body is necessary to truly hold law enforcement accountable and prevent future abuses like the one Judge Vance endured? Or would it undermine the authority and operational effectiveness of police departments, creating more bureaucracy than benefit? Let us know your thoughts on this critical debate in the comments below. We're not stopping our fight to bring these stories to light, to dissect the systems that perpetuate injustice, and amplify the voices demanding change. Your continued engagement, your shares, your comments, and your subscriptions are vital to this mission, enabling us to continue our investigative work. This isn't just about Judge Vance or Trooper Thorne or the Pennsylvania State Police. It's about all of us and the kind of society we choose to build, one founded on true justice, dignity, and equality for every single person, where the badge serves all, not just some. Join us in this ongoing conversation, and together, let's keep pushing for a world where such an incident becomes an impossibility, not a recurring nightmare.